Hello everybody, my name is Ryan, and this is the first video in a series on how to make a card wallet. It's a really easy project, it's a lot of fun. You don't need to have made anything with leather before. You don't need anything, you just need some basic tools. I'll show you how to make the template, how to cut it out, stitch it up, throw dye on, all that sorts of stuff. And it's very easy, anybody can do this. In addition to that, the template part is the key here, right? You can't just start, well, I suppose you can, but generally speaking, you don't want to just sort of start cutting randomly through leather. So I'm going to show you how to make a pattern. If for some reason you want to skip that part, I got a link in the description. You can get the pattern from me, but it's really easy and I highly recommend you just follow along in this video and make the template yourself. All right, so got a couple basic things in front of me here. I've got a couple credit cards taped together. Makes it a little bit easier when we're tracing the pattern. Got a pen, a couple sheets of paper. You stack them up, it's a little bit more nice, I guess you could say, to draw on. And a quilting ruler. So there's links to all these things in the description. They're affiliate links, and if you use the links, I might get a small commission from that. So, oh, and then we also need scissors or a craft knife to cut out the pattern. All right, so to start, all you need to do is place your credit cards or whatever placeholder cards you're using on one end of the paper. Then we're going to use a wing divider. This one's a little fancy looking, but essentially the only difference is, I don't know if you can see that or not, it's just got measurements on the bottom there, so it's a little easier to use. You could totally use a regular pair and just measure out how far you want to go, and this is what in the quilting world anywhere is, or the sewing world, you would call seam allowance. And we want just a hair over 3/8 of an inch, or if you're working metric, because most of these tools end up being metric, it is 10 millimeters. All right, so all we got to do is score a line 10 millimeters away from 3 of these sides. And you probably can't see it on the camera, but I've actually scored the edge of the paper. So it is somewhat easy to see for me, but just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to see, I'm just going to put a couple dots. Oop, where did the other one go? Well, maybe it's not that easy for me to see. So we can kind of see where things are at, and so I don't make quite as much of a fool of myself as I'm trying to lean around the lights and camera and all that kind of stuff. So all we got to do is now make some lines to start sketching this out. And it looks actually, so we can get this a little bit more square. So part of the reason why these rulers are handy is one, because they're see-through. Makes it a little bit easier if you wanted to, say, cut a strip of leather that's, you know, exactly an inch wide or something like that. But also, because they're so big, if you get one that's big like this, it does make it a little bit easier to at least get close enough to square. It's never going to be exactly perfect, but this can get you pretty close. One other note while you're using rulers, your pen is not going to be all the way up against the ruler itself. So you kind of want to look at what that point is and then butt your ruler up to that, and then that'll kind of bake in that slight gap that you have there. And don't worry about these overlaps. That's all good. We're going to be cutting this out anyways, so crazy lines going off to the side, that's all good. So if I was smart, I would have marked where I was at a minute ago. So let's kind of get us back to roughly where we were at. That's close enough. And so now what we're doing is trying to figure out how long does this need to be. Now, in reality, we don't need to get that close, because when we're making the wallet, we're actually going to cut this to length. But it is nice to have a pattern that is close enough, because then when we're marking out our leather, we know how much leather we need to get, or need to use. So essentially, because we're just going to have this, there's a little bit of extra space that we need for the thickness of the leather and all that, but we can kind of eyeball that of what does it look like when we fold this bad boy over. So I'm just going to eyeball that like that. And I'm just going to make one mark here, because there's no way that's going to be quite square. And actually, just to give us a little bit more padding, we're going to go slightly past that and mark our line. Now, the next thing you might be wondering is, hey, what about the corners? Don't we want those round? And the answer is yes. But it's very easy to cut those out after the fact. We could cut these into the pattern, but also when we're making the wallet itself, it's usually useful to not immediately cut those out anyways. So you can do it now, you can do it later. Let me see how much of a fool I can make out of myself here. Oop, let's see. That looks close enough. So you can mark all those around if you want to. And maybe I will, just for fun. That looks close enough. And when you're tracing this, even if you commit to, quote unquote, commit to whatever radius is a 10 millimeter one, when you're cutting these out, you can always just ignore those corners and cut them square or cut them whatever radius you want. So, oh, that one looks great. Let's see here. That one's close enough. All right, so now that we've got that, let's cut this out, and then we can move on to our pocket. So you can either cut this out with scissors, or if you want to get ultra precise, you can cut it out with this guy and your craft knife. But it is a little less awkward for me to cut it like that. I tend to lean 2 inches from the table when I cut things out with the hobby knife. And it's a little less awkward trying to do that, or a little less awkward cutting with the scissors in front of the camera than it is trying to do that leaning my fat head in front of the camera. So there we are. And actually, while we were at it, we will mark this as the wallet back. All right. So now that we have that, all we need to do is trace this out. Oop. And you don't need to trace the whole length of it, because obviously our pockets are hopefully smaller than the size of our back. But again, so now we're going to go back. Oop, where did my... Oh, there we are. Measure this out just a little bit. So we've got... Actually, let's see. We're going to be... Roughly half of this is going to be how far in we're stitching our stitch row. We have to decide, where do we want the reveal to be on the card? So, show you what I'm talking about. How far into this pocket do we want the card to sit? And it's really up to you. I do recommend putting it, or erring on the side of too much reveal rather than not enough, because if you have not enough, it's a giant pain to get your card out. So let's go just above the center line. That looks good to me. Yeah, that looks good, because that's plenty to keep your card secure in there and plenty to get at it Well, now I'm second guessing it looking at that. Let's see. Let's split the difference here. Let's do that. That looks good. So we just take our ruler again, line that all up to the right line. Should have marked this on the close side. All right, now, and it doesn't need to be precise. Again, this is just personal preference. It doesn't need to be high precision. Oh, I went 1/3 of a millimeter off. No, as long as it's square, you're all good. So, and now let's mark this before it looks like a piece of scrap paper. This is the wallet pocket. All right. Now, let's get this bad boy cut out. Actually, let me just double check that line. It looks a little crazy there. All right. And like I said, it's a little easier to get these precise with the hobby knife, but what are you going to do? All right. And there we have our wallet. So imagine just can do our test fit just like that. And that is looking great. Yeah, it'll sit in just like that. Just like that. Ah, perfect. Doesn't that? They're the spitting image. Look at this. All right. So now we're all set. And there you have it. Our wallet template all done. Like I said, this is really easy. Anybody can do this. Just takes a little bit of paper, a pen, rulers, those sorts of things. Random stuff you can find around the house to make the radiuses and that kind of stuff. And once you get over the hump of making your own templates, the sky's the limit. You don't have to be, beholden to, finding patterns on Etsy or something like that. Anything you can dream up, you can turn into a pattern, and you can turn it into a project. So if you have any questions about template making or anything like that, definitely feel free to throw those into the comments. And keep an eye out for the next video where we actually start making the wallet. So, if you like this video and want to see more, definitely subscribe. Thanks, and we'll catch you on the next one.